Many organizations are very facile with the traditional cognitive value. But when you get to the emotional culture, organizations can really not have any thoughts whatsoever about the emotions. Some of the senior leaders in my research who are most resistant to change are people who are very sensitive to their legacy. It's hard to accept that things might change and then listen to people who, in your estimation, don't have experience, but they have ideas. And unfortunately, they only realize they need to change when it's too late.
Welcome back to Season 4 of People Matter on Vietsuccess, and I am Minh Giang, CEO of Nhuận consulting firm, and I am the host of this show. So in this season, we will be joined by local and international experts, CEO and business leaders to explore multidimensional story on their journey to solve the ultimate puzzle for any organization today, unleashing execution capability by awakening a culture of innovation from within the enterprise. And today, so we will be discussing the topic leading and building positive emotional for innovation culture. And it is my pleasure to introduce our guest for this episode, Professor GS.Mandy O'Neill. So she's the Associate Professor Management of Costello College of Business, George Mason University. She earned her PhD in organizational behavior from the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Previously taught at the Wharton School and the University of Georgia, and focused on the interrelationship among emotion, organizational culture, and gender in the workplace and careers. Hello, Mandy.
Hello.
Yeah.
Xin chào.
Xin chào.
That's one of two words I'm learning so far in my time in Vietnam.
I know that this is your first time to Vietnam, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How
but
was
not my
your
last.
Yeah, definitely. So how was your your last week?
It's been amazing. I have been working with a research project involving Vietnamese business for over a year now, but coming to Vietnam for the first time, learning about the business culture, learning about the different industries and the business ecosystem has been a completely eye-opening experience that I could not have obtained by just reading transcripts, reading books, listening. So it's absolutely been the dose of culture I needed to not just understand business better, but also fall in love with the country and the culture.
Thank you. So, at the person who have worked with lots of, leaders all over the world, and you also have the experience to interact and work with the Vietnamese leader in the last week. So, what is the difference that you can see?
So it's been really interesting because it's not my first time studying organizational culture in global organizations and in Asia and specifically. But what was so interesting the past week, I was leading an MBA global residency for my university, the Costello College of Business at George Mason University. And this is a required class that our MBAs take, but every year we choose a different set of countries. I chose Vietnam because I was so interested in the culture. And what we learned was among other things, the ways in which Vietnamese business is different from even other Southeast Asian industry cultures, but also different from every other country and different depending on whether it's multinational or whether it's a private business in Vietnam or a family business. And it's been not just a learning experience, but also a humbling experience to understand the complexities that as a non-Vietnamese speaker are very difficult to obtain, including some very simple aspects of the language that challenge and stretch our imagination of what corporate culture means. So I've had a lot of interesting conversations to say, well, what does this word mean? Because this is the literal translation, but I'm feeling that in Vietnamese culture and how business operates, this has many meanings and it has a different meaning. And it's very important for anyone doing work in Vietnamese culture and business culture specifically to have a deep understanding of it. But it's also helpful to be able to zoom out and say, what can Vietnamese businesses learn from other organizations in different
Yeah.
countries, different
Yeah.
cultures that maybe they want to borrow from, or maybe they want to aspire towards, or maybe they want to avoid. And so that's been very interesting for me, both to zoom in on specific companies, but also to see how the company culture and frankly the country's aspirations really project a very exciting trajectory going forward. I feel this excitement and this optimism, and we have this term grit and resilience for a country that is on the move and businesses that are hungry and excited to take advantage of opportunities and also learn from what's happened in the past that's distinct to Vietnam.
Wow, that's great. So I think that it sounds to me that we should remain and keep our values you just share optimism, resilience, grit in our culture, right?
I think it's a cultural strength that is a hidden superpower. I don't think it's very hidden to anyone who knows Vietnamese culture, but I think it's perhaps hidden to companies around the world and business leaders who don't know that. So what I've learned the past week has deepened my understanding from the deep research that I've been doing on one specific company, but also helped me understand why multinationals would want to partner with Vietnamese organizations, why they want to seek
So why?
opportunities. Well, for example, I mean, so something that people talk about a lot is labor costs. They say, oh, well,
Yeah.
labor costs are lower.
Yeah, it's lower. Yeah.
But I think that's just one part of the story. I think this is a country where it's a highly educated workforce, especially among the young people. Some of the best educational scores around the world, not just math and science. So you have this incredible population of young people coming up into the workforce who are hardworking, who are ambitious, who are excited to contribute. And I think that companies that take advantage of that are really benefiting. Where I see the challenge is in the different generations in the workforce. And this happens in
everywhere,
every company. So my MBA students in the US are always complaining about they have new ideas. They're excited to make a difference, to contribute. And they say, the boomers are holding them back. And I say,
so the
well,
conflict of the generation,
exactly.
right?
And so at least in the United States, maybe in Vietnam, there are 6 generations by some counts in the workplace. So you have very different cohorts of experiences, of values. And I see that a lot in Asia in particular, where when I was doing work with a multinational that had significant presence in China, I was hearing from some of the senior leadership and the senior engineers who say that the young people are not acting according to Chinese values. For example, they would be very excited and proud and want to celebrate. And some of the senior leaders would say, that's totally inappropriate. Any big emotions are childish. And the young people are they're on TikTok. They're a global, generation. So they're not just influenced by what the elder generations are saying, they're influenced by the global. And I think that's an opportunity because suddenly you have a population of young people who are more similar in some ways than different. But it does make a challenge in workforces when you have senior leadership that has a different set of values that are maybe a little more traditional to that culture, interacting with young people who are saying, I want to break out of the culture a little bit. I want to celebrate.
So I want to free. I want to get to to be the full self expression.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I hear this a lot, I want work-life balance.
Exactly.
And you have older generations of workers saying, what do you mean? Work-life balance, what's that? You're spoiled, you're entitled. And young people, I think, are drawing very important boundaries that previous generations haven't gone through, but are very important for mental health, for well-being. And I think that's a good thing. I think other generations can learn from that. And that's something I'm seeing around the world, but I see it happening a lot in more traditional Asian organizations where there used to be, from what I learned, more of a style of fear of management, more of a fear-based leadership, and more deference to authority. And the younger generations are saying, I don't want that.
I don't want that.
Yeah.
And even I don't think that the young generation, so they have a fear with the authority.
Yeah. Do they have fear of anything?
The power? No. Okay. So what I got from your sharings, I think that there is a lot of thing, especially in terms of the values of the Vietnamese people that the multinational company or the partners, so they can think and relate to. For example, how much we are very hardworking, very ambitious, very the willing to contribute something bigger than ourselves, right? And so because you mentioned about the conflict of generation, so in your research or experience, so how we can handle that?
Well, it's challenging because I think that with any organization, there's the issue of legacy. And some of the senior leaders in my research who are most resistant to change are
Sure,
people who are very sensitive to their legacy.
sure.
And imagine, for example, in a family business where you built the business up and you want to
Successful,
it's very successful, and
yeah.
you believe that your success was due to the values that you had when you started the business, and you believe that's the right way to go. It's very hard to listen to new influences, new voices who say there's another way to do things, and it's hard to imagine the unimaginable, which is the day will come when the environment changes and you need to pivot. So if you're too late, your business might die. You won't survive. So it's hard to accept that things might change and then listen to people who, in your estimation, don't have experience, but they have ideas. And so I think it takes reducing some of that hierarchy that exists in many organizations, which is very hard. And in some cultures, it goes directly against the culture, and in other cultures, it's flatter. We have a dimension called power distance where the distance between the levels is smaller or bigger. And so I think with each country, but also within each company culture, it's important to recognize what the legacy culture is, and then to be able to plan for change, to plan for the need to adapt to the environment. And I think that learning organizations are easier at this, regardless of the country, the culture, the industry. So organizations that are constantly trying to learn and change. And that's something I'll say that I'm learning about Vietnamese culture is that unlike some cultures, and this goes up to the government, with the government being willing to say, we made a mistake, we're going to change, we're going to do it differently. And that is something that seems very unique to Vietnam to me, that is different from other cultures and other countries that refuse to admit their mistakes. But what I'm learning is that the government sets the standard for saying, if something's not working, let's change. Let's not hold on to it. Let's let it go. And that's very adaptive because it's usually this resistance to change that, companies are related to governments, especially in countries where the government does have an influence on the company culture and its finances.
So I heard the keywords here ideas versus experience, right? In the companies that who have you just share who have a long legacy and who was successful, and and because they're successful, so that's why that they have a tendency to attack with what they already know.
Yes, very attached.
Yeah. So this is the way that we successful, and this is the way that we build up this company. So it's so hard to release or to remove or to change.
One of my colleagues at George Mason University, Victoria Grady, is an expert on attachments and attachment theory. And she finds specifically that organizations get very attached and it's hard to let go. And so part of the process is to have a process of change where you start letting go of some of the history, the legacy, and there's change management procedures and methods to help with that process. But I think the first step is just people to even realize that there's a problem, because to your point, some organizations and leaders don't see any problems. They don't see any problems on the horizon. So why would they change? And unfortunately, they only realize they need to change when it's too late. It's like a doctor-patient metaphor. You only go to the doctor when the problem in the stomach ache is really bad. And not saying you should go with every, headache, but sometimes organizations wait too long, and then the problem is very big.
I think that I have a distinction to talk about this. We have a choice to choose whether we are in the mode of being proactive, adapt, or you must to adapt, you
Yes,
must to change.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And I mean,
It's totally different.
and we've seen
Yeah.
so many businesses that are like this, where, for example, a very old case that we sometimes teach is about e-readers, those books on devices. Bookstores in the United States thought no one will ever want to give up reading a book in their hands. And you don't talk about those companies anymore because they're in the graveyard. They've died because they realized it too late, versus the companies that said, wait a second. And sometimes I really think sometimes the young people are the sort of the visionaries to see the change that's coming, which is one reason why we need to listen to our young
Got it.
employees and
Yeah.
say, and they're
Yeah.
not always right, and they are very stubborn sometimes. I have teenagers and they are very stubborn, but I listen to them because in
Yeah.
their words and in their experiences, we can see the future, including some great ideas, like, for example, technology that maybe we never would have thought would be important, but social media, for example, some of the boomers, or my generation, Gen X, doesn't want to be on social media. And I think the young people have shown us the power of social media, and companies realize they need to be sensitive to social media. The old traditional
Exactly. Yeah.
traditional media are not going to work for companies to stay competitive and to change and to adapt, but also to reveal themselves. Because one of the problems I see as an organizational culture expert is organizations don't really know their own cultures, and then they certainly can't communicate that to potential employees. So potential employees might be interested in an organization, but they don't know much about the culture. And we know for many, many years that culture fit matters. How can you have culture fit if the organization themselves is not cognizant and aware and open about its culture? And so the potential employees can't know either. And unfortunately, by the time the employee gets to the organization, sometimes it's too late. They realize, wait a second, this poster on the wall, this website, even the interview process is nothing like the organization. And then they leave. And then the organization has lost a lot of money training, recruiting, attempting to socialize people, when the intervention is simply for organizations to be more honest about its culture, and to recognize that not every organizational culture has to be the same, but it is very important that it is adaptive to the environment. And the part which my own specialty is on that's most neglected is the emotional component. So many organizations are very facile with the traditional cognitive values, like team orientation, or attention to detail, or for example, integrity, which is a word that most organizations say but not everyone follows. But when you get to the emotional culture, which is my own expertise, organizations can really not have any thoughts whatsoever about what are the emotions that they are currently expressing and feeling and seeing throughout the organization, but also what are the emotions that they need to cultivate in the organizational culture. And those are two separate things, because when you have an organizational culture that just grows like a garden that doesn't have a gardener, all sorts of emotions can become habituated, they can become the norm, but they're not always very functional for what the organization needs to do. So, for example, you hear a lot about these startup cultures where the boss is screaming at everybody and throwing things, and there's a culture of fear, and people are working crazy hours, and that's how the company started. But as a company grows, it has a unique opportunity and really an urgency to cultivate the emotional culture intentionally. And that does involve a diagnosis also, which is to say, what are the emotions that we are seeing a lot, not just one person and not just one incident. So not that time when there was a big layoff, and not that one boss who's very hot-tempered, which I think has a Vietnamese word that translates to hot-tempered that I hear a lot in my research. I hear a lot of people saying, I used to be hot-tempered, or I'm trying not to be so hot-tempered. So, it's not just that, but it's also anxiety, the stress and
anxiety,
what it causes. Yeah,
burnout.
burnout. And so
Yeah.
we know it's very easy for everyone. It's natural to recognize and talk about those emotions, but it's very uncommon for leaders and organizations in general to focus on the emotions they want to cultivate, which include my own expertise on love, caring, compassion, affection.
Why the emotional culture is very important?
Well, I think the business case is it's a missed opportunity not to focus on it. Laughing with colleagues is very powerful. And not only is good for your health, but it's good for the team's health.
Yeah.
Sometimes, especially when it's combined with caring and knowing a person, can really get work done in teams that could not be done otherwise.
Especially, I think that in Asian culture, so we rarely talk about the emotion, or we rarely express our emotion to everyone around us.
Is that right?
Yeah, because I think that I just think and look back, it's so rare for me to listen directly from my parents said that, hey, I love you, or we love you. I think it's so rare. Yeah. So, but I think that with our generation, our current generation, so we need to learn how to express our emotion and share that emotion to our kids or our people around us. But even us, even ourselves, even myself, we have never have that experience in our life.
You're not alone.
So that's why we need to learn.
It's true. It's true. And this is an example where younger generations, especially in the United States, but I think other countries, are training more in schools for this emotional intelligence training. But older generations, and especially in some cultures where it's very discouraged, it exacerbates the generational gap. But even younger generations still need this, and especially in industries where it's not so common, and in parts of organizations. So within HR, for example, human resources, it's very common to find people who have some experience in organizational development and culture. But when you go over to the engineers, or when you go over to,
they don't care much about the emotion, because maybe that it can be misunderstood as the, when you talk about emotion, maybe it can be misunderstood as the childish or a weak.
Yes.
So that's why that I have a question for you. Okay, so in the simple and very simple and easy understanding, clarification. So why the emotional culture is very important in the organization, especially in the given the current situations where everything seem like a collapse and change so fast. There is a lot of bunny, tuna, and VUCA. So why is it important? Why is it matters?
Well, I think the business case is it's a missed opportunity not to focus on it. So my research for the past 20 years has demonstrated the impact of emotional culture on outcomes. Because I had a colleague once in the United States who said, it was a strategy colleague, he said, if it doesn't have a dollar sign, I don't care. And at first I thought that was very callous, and we have a moral obligation to focus on well-being and wellness and on the emotional health of workers. But that insight revealed to me what a lot of companies experience, which is the pressure to produce, to be profitable, to avoid accidents, to avoid theft, to increase sales, to grow,
to survive.
And so I think when we realize that, then suddenly there's an opportunity to demonstrate with hard evidence the impact of emotional culture. And I think for some organizations that are not necessarily thinking about this naturally, when you show them the numbers, when you show them the impact, suddenly they're interested. Maybe they're not, maybe they think this is soft and touchy-feely and they're not interested until you show them the numbers. And then they say, wait a second, you're telling me that I can predict productivity and that I can influence productivity, and I can reduce burnout, and I can reduce HR absences and healthcare costs and benefits, and I can increase innovation and R&D output. Suddenly they're very interested. And so I think for those of us who are interested in culture and want to see more organizations utilizing culture, I think we need to start from the outcomes, and we need to say, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And then to demonstrate the impact of culture to help solve those problems. And I should say that not all of my colleagues agree with this. There are some colleagues who believe we have a moral obligation, and the moral obligation is enough. And I'm very practical. And one thing I've learned about Vietnamese culture is it's very practical too, very pragmatic. Is, the moral obligation is one thing, and that might be convincing for some people, but for a lot of people, the practical evidence is very compelling.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I try in my own research and my own consulting, I try to focus on the practical and the evidence-based, and also to show that this is not abstract. This is very concrete. This is very real. So with something like emotions, people say, well, how do I know what you're feeling? How can I tell? And I often say, well, if someone says, I want to punch him in the face, probably he's feeling anger. Or if someone is smiling broadly and laughing a belly laugh, probably they're enjoying a moment with their colleagues and they're feeling joviality. And if someone receives a gift of gratitude that is so thoughtful that they start crying, probably that had an impact on them. And it might be someone who's never experienced how wonderful it is to be cared for and to be appreciated and to be laughed with. Interestingly, one of the really coolest pieces of research that I have seen was an epidemiologist at University of Pennsylvania who did a study of community health. And she found that the last time that someone experienced a belly laugh, like when your whole body is laughing, was a significant predictor of community health. And I use that in my own research to show that laughing with colleagues is very powerful, and not only is good for your health, but it's good for the team's health. And laughter sometimes, especially when it's combined with caring and knowing a person, can really get work done in teams that could not be done otherwise. Because if I had some feedback, so for example, especially in some cultures, like I did fieldwork in Mexico, and in Mexican culture, it's very tough to give harsh feedback. It goes against the culture. And in Brazil, I heard the same thing. You have to, Philippines also, you have to do the back channels because it's very aggressive to just give someone feedback. So in the United States and in some European countries in particular, or Israel, direct feedback is the way to go. They want to hear it.
But it doesn't work for like a Japanese or like a Vietnamese or the Philippine, the Asian culture.
You have to find another way.
Yeah, the
and
sanctity.
But so sometimes the combination of a joke, when it's with a caring
with the
relationship,
right?
You can say things without saying them. And it doesn't involve the gossip or 3 or 4 people being involved. I can say something, but I can say it with caring and affection. And you hear it and you receive it, but it doesn't hurt. It doesn't make you defensive. And so sometimes we do workshops where we help people feel and experience and practice these emotions. I mean, the metaphor I use is a toolbox. Sometimes you don't have that tool, or your organization doesn't have that tool in the toolbox, and you need to develop it. And sometimes it is helpful for people coming from other countries, because for some countries and cultures, it comes more naturally. So they can say, this is how you do it. I'll give an example from Japan, for example. I think Japan does interpersonal consideration so beautifully that in the United States, we need to learn that. So when I was in Japan, and I tell this example in Washington, D.C., which is, it's a big city. And I say, in Washington, D.C., maybe you would put your book bag in front of you so that someone doesn't steal something. In Japan, you put your book bag in front of you so you don't bump people. And to me, that's one example of a small gesture of interpersonal consideration that everyone around the world could use, but some cultures, it comes more naturally. So that's one area where I think intercultural exchange is really helpful. And I think that this week in Vietnam, my students and I and the businesses, we learn from each other because we say, this is working really well. We could learn that. And I think businesses do the same. So when businesses come together, when CEOs come together, like in your consulting practice, they can learn from each other and say, oh, you tried that and it worked well, or you tried that and it failed, that's a great opportunity, but it does involve some vulnerability and it involves psychological safety. And for some leaders, it's very difficult to admit, to ask for help, to be willing to listen and take ideas from others. That's the challenge.
So we are going to talk about the psychology safety later, but back to our conversation, and I think that so you're totally right in terms of the impact of emotional, the positive emotional impact into the community, to the way that we work, interact, or the way that we produce result, or the way that we work together. But I just have the question, what kind of the emotion that you think that's really essential, for the people, or for the leader, to be intentionally create for their team. Yes. It's so easy, it's so easy to say, but as leaders, there's a lot of things ongoing, and there is a lot of breakdown. So that's why that sometimes that we know that we intentionally create a more a humorous or a laugher, however.
So it's a great point. And getting back to the diagnosis piece, sometimes the assessment has to be, what are our challenges and what are the problems we're trying to solve? Because my approach to organizational culture, which is very common in many culture communities, is that culture is an adaptation to the environment internally and externally. And so first you need to do an assessment of the environment, and this is where strategy matters. But then once you do that assessment, you recognize what the need is that needs to be cultivated. So for example, if you want to create more innovation, that's a problem that a lot of organizations struggle with, and they want more innovative ideas, and they want people to contribute ideas. Which emotions are useful? Well, one that's really obvious is curiosity.
Exactly. Yeah.
So being curious, and curiosity is very interesting because some people are more naturally curious than others. So they would gravitate to professions and to organizations that bring out that natural strength. And for other people, they need to be trained and they need to change their mindsets. The good thing we know is that mindsets are very flexible and can be trained, but it helps, back to the fit issue, if people who are working in research and development, R&D, are naturally curious. That's helpful. But there's another emotion that we've found to be really helpful in partnering with curiosity, which is a newer emotion, and that's awe. AWE.
AWE.
So it's the experience of amazement and wonder. In some of my research with engineers and with R&D in particular, I have found that when some people are overly curious, they, especially engineers, they can go down a rabbit hole of their interest, but it might be disconnected from the organization's mission and what everyone else is doing. That curiosity can become a problem, but when it's partnered with awe, which is an emotion that causes the experience of the small self, so you are a small part of a larger entity, it's particularly helpful when partnered with curiosity, because then employees can recognize, I'm curious and I want to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, but I also can step back and look at the big picture, that I am a part of a larger organization, mission and vision and strategy, and I need to be a part of that, not just what I'm personally curious about. So if you can imagine a 2x2, when people are curious and can experience awe, they can get back to the organization's mission and vision. They're able to balance what they are personally interested in. And by the way, curiosity causes a lot of intrinsic motivation, of course, because you want to work on it because you want to work on it. I'm not doing it because I'm getting paid or I'm chasing a bonus. I'm working it because I'm
full
interested.
Of autonomy and sense of the progress,
yes.
right?
And that's the ideal, when you can match people's intrinsic motivation with the work they're doing. They're not just doing it for the money, for the pay, for the bonuses. They're doing it because they're genuinely interested.
They're genuinely interested and want to explore new things.
Exactly. But you have to balance it, because sometimes they're working on something that they're not aligned with their team or with the manager or with the
So
organization.
individual. Yeah.
Exactly. They're very individual focused. And so to get them back, that's another example of where you want to have these two emotions, almost like a potion. You want to have, this, a little bit of this ingredient, a little bit of that ingredient. And so that metaphor is useful to think about how we want to intentionally cultivate the cultures to focus on, what ingredients do we need to add some more to, like cooking.
Sure.
If we put,
you need more like an ingredient.
if we put too much of that chili sauce
and
and
balance,
then suddenly everybody, it's going to ruin the dish. But if we don't have enough, then maybe we're not going to have enough spice, enough like fire in the belly to get people working when we need to. And that's a challenge, by the way, with some other emotions, like, for example, caring, compassion. If it's left alone, I've worked with organizations where they need some other emotions as part of the recipe to get the employees a little motivated, especially if they need to be vigilant for threats. So this is particularly important where you're in an organization where there are threats on the horizon and you need to cultivate a healthy degree of anxiety to be aware of the threats. You don't want to eliminate all anxiety because then you're just, you're chill, you're enjoying things, you're focused on this, and you completely miss the competitor who comes along. So again, in an organization, you want to have a kind of a portfolio of both personalities, but also intentionally cultivate some of these emotions so that organizations cultivate and they intentionally build up the tools should they need them, but especially if the environment changes. So Charles O'Reilly and Mike Tushman's research is on ambidexterity, which is one way to do it.
I know.
Yes,
right hands and left hand.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's helpful because especially if you have an
Exactly.
organization that's very traditional, they're not going to change the whole organization, but maybe they want to create a subculture or a group that is more innovative where they're testing out some new ideas. They're not sure it's going to work and they're not convinced that the whole organization needs to change, but they can coexist. And I think for culture, whether it's more traditional values or whether it's emotions, that's really the smart way to think about it.
Yeah. And back to the how we can build up the innovation of the culture, like a culture of innovation, and like you just shared, like the curiosity and the art, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is also the power of and, right? So you need to be like a curious. However, like the thing that you are you curious here need to be aligned with the big picture. Like I need to be aligned with the goals or like the team or the shared goal or the team, rather than like just like individual.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
left and by the same token, if people are too focused on the big picture, the mission, the strategy, they sometimes lack the focus to really persist when the problems get hard, when the challenges are something that requires long hours and a lot of intrinsic motivation. That's where I have also found with my collaborator, Haria Jazairi, that gratitude is very helpful. Because when people feel they are appreciated for their work, they're willing to go a lot farther than if they never receive appreciation. And so we found in our research that expressing thankfulness, expressing gratitude, creating cultures of gratitude also causes employees to work harder, longer, smarter, but only when it's a team environment. So this only works when there's a team orientedness, so people help each other out. We found that those particular traits really coexist together. But it's surprising, it's shocking really, how few organizations implement gratitude on a regular basis. Gratitude is very cheap. It is, and it's universally appreciated. I mean, no pun intended, but when we survey organizations, and the Templeton Foundation did a large survey where they found that people experience gratitude in all domains of life, of course, but the workplace was one environment where they experienced it the least.
The least.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it seemed like we wanted to wait until that we have the result, and then that we
Yes.
can say thank you or acknowledge,
Yes.
rather than like or show the gratitude, rather than just like celebrate small win or value progress
Yes.
every day.
Well, that was our latest publication, which came out in Harvard Business Review, was that saying thanks in advance works even better. So usually you wait until afterwards, but our research found that when managers or really anyone
Say thank you in
thank people in
advance.
advance,
Oh wow.
people worked even harder and longer. And the reason is because we found that they were less annoyed with the task because they already had been thanked.
That's really interesting.
It is,
Yeah,
right? That
yeah.
so you have in your inbox, at least in the US, all the time, thanks in advance, thanks in advance, thanks in advance. We noticed that in an organization that was doing it, quite a bit. And so we said, wait a second, we're noticing that people are doing this. And it seems to make people less annoyed about the task, whatever it is. Like, listen, we have this new procedure we need to implement. I know it's going to be really annoying. Thanks in advance for your cooperation. And we found, and we replicated it in experiments with workers who don't do anything for free, nothing for free. We found that when people were thanked, they were willing to work a little longer and a little harder
Yeah.
when they were thanked in advance.
I think that
and they even told us, they said, this might be just part of the experiment, but it felt good. So even if
it's
they,
good.
yeah, even if they think the manager is doing
Yeah.
it to, and we have to be careful though, because we don't want to encourage with any of these suggestions, not focusing on, for example, a living wage and thinking that culture and positive emotions can be a substitute for meeting people's basic needs. Because I've seen some managers in my work who think, wait a second, I can just give gratitude and then not pay people as well. But that doesn't work. First of all, employees see that. They totally recognize that.
So that's why, like, sometimes that, like, I always say that, okay, so this recommendation is like for not for you, like for manipulation or
Yes,
like
Yes.
you use this because it's support for your own needs
Exactly.
or
Especially,
intention.
and especially with gratitude, which I mentioned, more than the other emotions I've talked about, employees are very sensitive to when they think the gratitude is
As
being used.
tools as being
Exactly.
used.
Exactly. So when it's not authentic, when
yes.
it's not
That's
genuine,
the foundation.
Exactly. And you could say that with any culture, like anything I've talked about, when it's not authentic, doesn't work as well. But for some reason, gratitude in particular, it has the opposite effect.
Exactly.
It makes people even more transactional,
even
more bitter and cynical. So you have to be careful because managers sometimes think there's a quick fix for everything. And as a culture researcher, I strongly believe, and the evidence shows, there is no quick fix. I mean, there are certainly small interventions. There are micro moments. There are micro interventions. But for culture creation, maintenance, change, it's not easy, and it does require investment from all levels, but especially from the top.
Yeah. And I'm totally aligned with you that like the foundation here is authentic, because as a human being, so we really like we can feel, and we really be sensitive with like someone like who do this or do that because of the like, authenticity or not. Like,
and even if we don't have the words for it, our bodies feel it and we react accordingly. And that includes sometimes when we hide emotions, for example. There's a very robust program of research that shows that when we suppress emotions, like when we feel them coming up in our body and we put a lid on it, it doesn't work and sometimes has the opposite effect. And so part of the sort of micro training that we do sometimes is to help people first recognize the emotions, and then even better, if they can reframe them, if they can, do situation selection to not feel those emotions in the first place. But then when the emotional experience has begun, thinking that you can just put a lid on it really doesn't work, and it has the opposite effect, which is it impacts your cognition, it impacts your memory, it impacts your interpersonal relationships, and it has lasting effects. And so that's we've known about that for several decades, but it's part of this larger package of emotional culture diagnosis training that's very important, which involves sometimes working with individuals to recognize their own tendencies. For example, there's a very strong effect that men tend to suppress emotions more than women.
Need to be like, I'm strong.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes we have specific interventions for our male colleagues and our male leaders. And by the way, it's very surprising. Sometimes you think that the hardest clients are gonna be so resistant, and I have had that experience where I've gone in front of a group of multinational engineers from Asia and the U.S. and the Middle East, and had to do a loving kindness meditation with them. And when I started, I saw all their faces because I see emotions too, and I said, "Uh-oh, this is going to be hard." They were very skeptical. They were very like this, the and that's what we look for, the body posture. I thought this is hard, and then they went, but they were forced to do it because the VP of R&D said they had to. And then afterward, a few of them came back and said, I was really skeptical, but I have to say that that felt really good. Yeah. I mean, even something like hugging. I mean, one of my collaborators is
maybe
not,
that
is
was
not
one
a
of
hugger.
the rare moment that like they can be themselves. They can
Yeah.
express their emotion.
When we force our bodies to do things sometimes, everything follows. And so when we force ourselves to engage in the breathing and the intentionality and whether the smiling, whatever it is, when everything goes along. And that happens sometimes too in companies where when a new person comes and they realize, oh my gosh, I didn't realize what this culture was like. They do have a choice. They don't have to leave. We're all familiar with the attraction, selection, attrition model, which is, we're attracted to organizations that are a good fit. We're selected into organizations that are a good fit. We leave if it doesn't fit. There's another S, which is socialization, and that applies to emotional culture too. So we've heard in our research, my collaborators and I, people say, well, I wasn't a hugger, someone who likes to hug before I joined this organization, but after a while, it becomes the norm, and after a while, it feels good.
Yeah. So the culture is the norm, is the values, is the behaviors.
Yes, actually, it's all of the above. You need to have this particular sort of recipe to get the breakthroughs. Not to say they can't happen, but the thing you see sometimes is when someone says, I can't have this in my company, so I'm going to leave to go to some other company, and then the great idea goes to the other company.
Okay, so Mandy, back to like the innovation culture, because this series talk more about the building of the culture of innovation.
Yeah.
So I heard from you like the curiosity, and resolving the problem or the curiosity, but that align with the big goal or the shared goal, the art, right? Anything else, that emotion?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of cultures where you see what we call strong cultures of innovation, you also see emotions like enthusiasm and excitement.
Enthusiasm and excitement.
And this is kind of interesting from a cross-cultural perspective, because when I was doing field work with a multinational in China, they gave that exact emotion as an example of how they don't like the younger generation of workers expressing enthusiasm and excitement. They thought it was inappropriate to be so emotional. And that's a challenge, because if you want a culture of innovation, we do find, and the evidence shows, that excitement and enthusiasm are often sort of virtuous, positive cycles of emotions where, you're curious, and then you have a success, like a new innovation or breakthrough, and then you want to celebrate it. Like, that's all very natural, but it's not natural for every culture. And what I wonder, as someone who does research internationally, is can certain cultures for whom some of these emotions do not come naturally, can they and should they learn to embrace them? Because the research that's been conducted has found it's helpful, but there's a challenge because the culture sometimes is blocking it. So in the United States, for example, team orientation is something that doesn't necessarily come naturally, especially to very individualistic cultures. But my own research has found that in some organizational cultures, team orientation is necessary for harnessing some of these emotions, like gratitude, and it's more easily contagious. And this notion of the lone genius is very rarely how innovations happen. Most of the times it is a team process.
Got it.
And so when people are competing against each other, it can inhibit the innovation and the trust that's necessary to build the best ideas.
Yeah.
And so it's a different set of emotions sometimes that, other countries and other cultures might have to cultivate, which is to say, okay, we need more team building intervention because you're so used to being an individual contributor or lone
Silo,
genius.
individual.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what we need to build this product and make it great is everybody's best ideas. And even in something like a brainstorming session, you need people feeling comfortable speaking out where they don't
Psychology
feel
safety, right?
Yes. And so one of the interventions that we've done actually comes from improv comedy, where, and this is very popular in the United States. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Where they have theater troupes or like the comedy troupes like Second City in Chicago will come to corporations and do improv because the basis of improv is actually very similar to the basis of how innovative ideas come up with. So you have to build on each other. Yes. And they have people come together. And at first, it, like everything I've said, it feels very unnatural for some people. But then when you practice it, it becomes the norm. And that applies also to some companies and some cultures where they're very uncomfortable with feedback. So I've done some workshops, for example, where the problem is giving and receiving feedback. And so for those organizations, they need practice in what Intel many years ago made famous with this idea of constructive confrontation, which is to get people up and sort of allow them to get more comfortable giving and receiving feedback, including when it might be, hurtful, or you're afraid of looking bad, or you're afraid to be vulnerable. So I keep coming back to this theme of vulnerability. That's a thread that comes through a lot of these, but depending on where people are at in their careers, their generations, the organization's history, the larger culture, some or more of these need to be targeted interventions to work on that skill. And back to the toolbox metaphor, it's like you need that tool in your toolbox. Not to say that everyone is going to be an expert at everything, but for some people, getting up to a baseline of competency can really accelerate the team, whatever the outcome is, whether it's innovation or whether it's safety or really anything. But I think specifically for innovation, the research shows that you need to have this particular sort of recipe to get the breakthroughs. Not to say they can't happen, but the thing you see sometimes is when someone says, I can't have this in my company, so I'm going to leave to go to some other company. And then the great idea goes to the other company. And then you have companies full of people for whom they have other people around like them, and they have managers who reward it, not punish it. They have managers that live the values, not just put a poster on the wall, because you've certainly seen that where a leader says, we want innovation. I'll give you an example, which is one of the workshops we did for a large company was they wanted to be a data-driven company. And the people who came into the workshop confessed on the first day that this was around the time when this particular company was deciding its work from home policy, which is a very popular discussion in the United States, like whether after COVID to work from home or not.
Or hybrid,
Yeah. So the people really wanted to work from home. And this was a very traditional organization that pre-COVID, nobody worked from home because they had an underlying assumption that working from home means you're slacking off, you're not working hard. That was an assumption that was very deeply embedded in the culture. But COVID happened, and it was a natural experiment. So they wanted to have this workshop on being a data-driven organization. And the employees came in, and the first thing they started complaining about was, we showed our bosses the data of how productive we are at home, and they said, we don't care about those data.
Oh.
And so that's a very specific example of the leader's actions directly undermining what they said they wanted.
Not what the talk, right?
Yes. I mean, and it was such a funny example because that wasn't what they were thinking about data. They were trying to think about, we need to be big data and AI and all this stuff. But the employees said, well, you can't just pick and choose which data you care about. Because if you're a data-driven culture, data comes in all form. And I'd say the same with innovation, which is that some companies think innovation only means R&D. And it's obvious if R&D is a big part of the culture that that equals innovation. But what I've seen in working with organizations is that innovative companies and innovative cultures can be any industry. So, for example, if you're working in a factory, like this week, we had a lot of opportunities to visit factories. There's a lot of, factory culture differences in Vietnam alone. There are ways to be innovative in whatever factory, in whatever part of the factory you're in, which can include, for example, how you design the way people speak together. So, for example, factories are very loud. And one innovative organization that I've worked with realized that when the machines are so loud, you actually can't talk. And that's a problem for communicating anything, an error or, oh, I need to take a break, whatever. And so they implemented emotional intelligence training and listening and nonverbal reading of each other's faces
Wow.
to be able to communicate, because simply the noise of the machines was so loud, you couldn't talk even if you wanted to. And they found that it increased productivity among the workers because they can communicate nonverbally much faster. To me, that's an example of innovation. It's not a new machine that came in and made things faster. It was a training to be able to recognize a way to solve a problem that was innovative.
Yeah. So that is also like definitely the definition that I learned from Harvard Business School last year about the innovation, meaning of cultural innovation. And then my professor said that, okay, so the definition of innovation is solve problem.
Yes.
So problem, and anything new and useful, we call that's the innovation.
Yes. Well,
new
and
and useful.
If you get, so my colleague at George Mason, Matt Cronin, is a creativity and innovation expert. And our other collaborator, Jennifer Mueller, is, and they, in their community of creativity and innovation people, they have a lot of thoughts about how organizations define innovation, how they define creativity. And in Jennifer Mueller's case, she has this really interesting research where she finds there's a bias against creativity. That people are actually not looking for creativity. They may say they want to, but actually the evidence shows they're biased when they see it. And so her work has found that the challenge is sometimes people's resistance to something they say they want, but then when they have evidence of it, they don't like it.
The unconscious bias. Right?
I mean, it's just, there's so many little avenues to realize that, the journey from an idea that you want to execute on to the implementation is very long. And there are lots of little, side roads or unintended consequences along the way that you have to anticipate, because sometimes you go down this road and you realize, So for example, with gratitude, my own work has shown that sometimes in the extreme, we're seeing what in English is called entitlement. So people say, well, now that I'm receiving all this gratitude, you need to give me a raise. And especially for organizations that can't give a raise, it's like, well, we can't. Or they get used to it and they want more and more and more and more. And then it doesn't feel good anymore, which is, I never thought I would say that was a problem, like too much gratitude. But people, they get habituated to it and it doesn't mean anything. And so we have to work with organizations in general, which is to say that any emotion, any aspect of culture in the extreme can be a problem. And we have to recognize the shadow side of anything that's a strength, because where there's a strength, there's a weakness, and a weakness can be a strength. But I think organizations especially get really extreme. Exactly. And then they're caught surprised when something they wanted and they succeeded in doing has this unintended consequence that's a different problem that needs to be solved.
So, Mandy, so any advice for the Vietnamese leaders? So I think that you already learn and research about the type of the leadership of the Vietnamese leaders. So they have a tendency to suppress or not show the emotion, or the showing the emotion it can be occur as the weak or a childish, or so. I know that there are some leaders, they really want to create the excitement or create a enthusiastic environment. However, they don't know how. And especially that they don't know, and especially that it starts from themselves. How can they express? Because to be honest, sometimes I look at their face, I feel so boring. Even like when they say that, okay, so I really wanted to bring the assignment to the company, but so any
Well,
advice
I
and
mean, I think,
anything that like we can like start
yeah,
and
I think
doing.
that the discipline of coaching has come a long way. And I
Mm,
think that there's a real opportunity for leaders to become better leaders by working with a trusted coach. And I know that there, coaching can mean many things, but I
mm,
think that the leaders who are committed to improving themselves,
mm,
sometimes they need to do it in an environment that's outside of the organization
mm,
with a trusted coach and maybe a cohort of other leaders going through the same things, because it can't happen at work for various reasons. So they have to go out, they have to go, do a program, they have to get a coach, they have to join it. But, you know, it also, to get the best use out of a coach, you have to have an open mind. And how to open a leader's mind up, I think there are many ways for that to happen. Unfortunately, sometimes it is a crisis where a crisis happens and they realize they have to change. But if the leaders want to avoid the crisis, they can start thinking proactively about it, again, in a safe space. And the safe space is probably not there. So, for example, I work with organizations that say, oh, well, we have an internal coaching program. And I said, well, that's great, but there's a challenge there, right? Which is, can I really express my weaknesses and my vulnerabilities to
with the
you?
internal coach?
Exactly. If I
No,
know that you're best friends with the HR person
no.
and you say it's confidential, but I know after a few, after a few beers or something, maybe people start talking. And so, and even if they don't, even if they really do have a high degree of integrity, there's still that paranoia and they're not wrong. So, when we go into organizations, one of the first things I do is a network analysis, because it's important to know who's talking to whom, who's going to who for advice. And that network looks very different from the organizational chart.
Mm,
So you can understand that better. But again, I think that's a challenge of an internal coaching program. It's cool because ideally the coach knows the culture and can advise you. Like, for example, should I go to the boss with this request or this
mm,
feedback?
mm,
And the coach who knows the organization might say, no, do it. This happened to me last week. One of my colleagues said, should I give this dissertation committee chair some feedback about this? And I said, you know, listen to his lead. That was advice specific to my department, my organization. And I think that that's the advantage of an internal coach, but the disadvantage is the trust, being vulnerable and all that. And also, you get this problem of, we call it in English the fishbowl effect, which is, if a fish is in a fishbowl, like if they're swimming in the water, do they know they're in the water? So it's very important to get outside
and outside the
and get some
water.
outside
Yeah.
ideas. Yeah.
Mm,
And that could come from internally from Vietnam. And I know you do a lot of training in the United States with international experts and the branded organizations. I think that's helpful too, because then you get a multinational group and you get international experts coming in. But the international experts also have to learn too that not everything works the same. And so
exactly. Yeah.
it's not always the case that you can take something off the shelf and it applies everywhere. And even something like gratitude, believe it or not, when I've presented this research, I've had people from different countries come up and say, that would not work in my country. And I say, what do you mean? Who doesn't like gratitude? And the answer is XYZ country thinks it's totally fake. And same thing with caring and compassion and love. I have had countries and organizations from different countries come and say, well, that's not fair. Because if you express compassion, then someone else might be less expressive and maybe they have needs. So that's not fair. So there's a fairness reason that some countries just reject this caring and compassion. So you always have to be sensitive to understanding the context and then being able to adapt. I think there are some principles that are universal, but when I say positive emotional culture, I think positive means not just happy, not just smiles and laughter. It means what helps the organization survive and thrive and be adaptive. And that sometimes means cultivating emotions that you need, for example, a healthy degree of anxiety to be vigilant, or sometimes you need anger to be able to give people the courage to speak up or to signal that you've
Create a
crossed
sense
the
of
line.
urgency, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
an emergency. I
Yeah.
mean, even something like for anyone who's seen that Pixar movie Inside Out about
The
emotions.
pizza, yeah.
Initially, the emotion of sadness was kind of like the loser emotion, but they actually rewrote the script. They work with emotion scientists at University of California, Berkeley, and in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area. And they said, no, we need to rewrite that script because sadness has an important function, which is to communicate that someone needs attention. So every emotion has a function, and it's important to align that function, but it's also important to have a team. So you could think of Inside Out in a way like a team. You have anger, you have joy, you have sad, and they come out in different situations. I mean, you can think about any kind of organization or any team as that as well. You want to actually have access to the full range of emotions so that you can bring it out as needed and you can have a comfort level, but you can also control it. Because sometimes, and I see this a lot where people say, oh, I'm authentic, and the person says, yeah, they're an authentic jerk. They're screaming at people all the time and I'm authentic.
Authentic
and it's
so that you just like
yeah, you're authentic to be a jerk. And I say, well, no, that's not what authenticity, that it doesn't stop there because you also have to be interpersonally considerate.
Got it.
Because if your authenticity is toxicity to all of your team, then that's a problem because you might be a genius and you might be fantastic at what you do, but you have to understand that you are causing other people to leave the organization because they can't work with you. And that's a cost also. And so I see this a lot in the United States where it is a little bit more of an individualistic culture. And sometimes the brilliant jerks, are tolerated.
Sophisticated, like to judge someone or judge something.
Yes. And so that's a dilemma, right? It's like, well, we need this. I mean, you see it in sports too. I mean, we're following the World Cup right now. My husband's from Portugal. So we're waiting to see what happens. But you see it in soccer all the time. You see some people who are excellent individual players and maybe not as good at team players. So, we can learn a lot from sports too.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. And so thank you so much for attending this conversation. And I'm really look forward to learning more about the you just share the how to build up the positive emotional culture in the organization. And the positive emotion here doesn't mean that being happy or being fun all the time, but as a leader we need to to read the situation, to be sensitive, what kind of the emotion that I need or I want to create for the people to feel or to experience now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, I think what you're doing at Newing is amazing.
Yeah.
And training with the experts and sharing this knowledge. And can I practice one of my Vietnamese words? It's very hard, but come on.
Yeah, cảm ơn.
Come on. Okay, come on.
Yeah.
I'm trying. It's very challenging. Vietnamese language is a challenge, but I'm trying.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Thank
Mandy.
you so much.
Thank you so much for your time and generosity to participate this season. And I think that a lot of Vietnamese leader can be beneficial from our conversation today.
Well,
and
I appreciate the invitation, and I am in awe of what Vietnam has done, especially in the past few decades, and excited and optimistic about what's to come.
Thank you so much, Mandy, for participating in this episode. And those were practical insights from yours on how to lead and build up the culture of innovation. And thank you so much for supporting the People Matters. And if you enjoy today's episodes, please support it by subscribing to the Vietsuccess YouTube channel. You can also listen to this conversation on platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to join our Zalo group to engage in multidimensional discussion on our podcast topic, and sign up for our newsletter to receive the latest updates every Thursday morning. Thank you, goodbye, and see you next time.